You can now leave a comment or a question for us on Buzzsprout by clicking the link at the top of the show notes page. We can't wait to hear from you. And now, here's a gem from the vault. I took some of the best parts of my conversation with mystic and teacher Stephanie Acello and created this episode. It's a true smorgasbord of spirit. I'm certain there's something here that feeds your soul. Welcome to Evolving Humans. I'm your host, Julia Marie, and this podcast is for visionary people like you who are exploring the true nature of reality and want to contribute to the global awakening. You seek to deepen the connection to your multidimensional self so that you can live a more conscious life. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Evolving Humans. We appreciate your continued support. My guest today is Stephanie Acello, mystic poet, author, teacher, and speaker. She's written 2 inspirational books of mystical, poetic insights and writings she calls heart writings, Pour Me Another Cup and Balancing the Stones. She continually walks the path of self-discovery, and her books bring the unknown into the known with dynamic, inspirational, and profound simplicity. Welcome back, Stephanie. I'm looking so forward to this conversation, and I want to thank you for sharing your adventures with spirit with us.
Thank you for having me again. I appreciate it.
Well, I want to hear what your views are, especially on resonance and how that impacts our life circumstances.
Yeah, I see ourselves as big tuning forks, walking around, You probably have heard this, but I'll mention it just in case somebody who's listening hasn't. When you have tuning forks that are at a certain resonance or a note, so if you have, say, you have 2 tuning forks, that's the note of A or something, and you hit one of them, well, the other A is going to start vibrating. Now, if you have an A note and a E note, and you hit the E note won't vibrate. So it kind of is like with us, wherever we're vibrating, and what that means is whatever we're thinking, whatever we're feeling, whatever we believe in, whoever we are at that moment, vibrating at our beingness, that's what brings in certain circumstances and experiences. It's not if you have a thought, maybe not a good thought. It's something that is who you are. So if you have a couple of thoughts, it can bring in certain things, but it's usually what your predominant vibration is. And it could bring in certain things into your life, like tuning forks. So now this is my take on it as well. Now, resonance, what that means is, where are you resonating at? Okay. I feel we will always have a low resonance and a high one that we resonate. But we can always raise it where the low one could be the highest that you had last time, and now you have a higher one. Mm-hmm. So even so if you didn't have money, I have nothing in the refrigerator, say. Well, that's a low on the resonance scale. I have no food to feed my kids. That's terrible. Then on the high one would be maybe someone brought off and you have a couple of meals in there. Well, then you started changing some ways of your thinking, and you started doing something differently. Then your resonance scale will rise. Well, now the low is you only have a few meals in your refrigerator, but you don't have no food anymore. And the high is you have a full refrigerator, and that can keep on going up. But there will always be that low and high, because that's part of the human experience. Mm-hmm. But your low doesn't have to be, really crazy or devastating. And the high could be really groovy, So that's, it matters where you're resonating. And of course, there's going to be times where we have lows that we're not going to like. But if you realize that, well, then it can be changed and you're going to raise the scale. But if everything is frequency, what is so funny, the ancient texts mentioned that thousands of years ago, and now science is backing it up. Mm-hmm. This is what I find amazing. We have matter, M-A-T-T-E-R, right? And according to the scientists, there's 3 main ones. There's actually another one, but the 3 main ones that we have on the earth is solid, liquid, and gas. Okay, what are they made up of? Well, molecules. What's a molecule? Well, there's a bunch of atoms, a couple of atoms being put together. Well, what's an atom? It's 99.999 space. So where is the solidity coming from? Right? Now, and also they're finding out, we thought, atoms had all these little particles buzzing around. Well, they're finding out now it's just bundles of light, frequency, and vibration. And they actually are waiting for our direction. Our way we think directs a lot of the atomic matter that's manifested in our physicality. So if atoms are 99.9999 space, where is the world? It's in us. We are creating the world. Does that make sense?
Yes, actually.
And so there is no solidity in the world. We experience it as being solid and separate from us, because that's the joy of it. It's the joy of, eating food, and that's part of the human experience. But in actuality, just like time, it really doesn't exist. Just like the three, past, present, and future, doesn't exist. It matters on where you're vibrating, where your frequency is at. So if you're in a fear frequency all the time, thinking fear thoughts, oh my God, we're going to run out of food, or the Chinese are going to do this, all this stuff going on. And if you're in that mode of that frequency, it's going to draw in more of that fear frequency. So one of the biggest challenges for conscious people now, and for everybody that wants to make changes, is to not go in that fear frequency.
Yep.
Get connected to that greater perspective. You could be aware of it, and of course, be conscious of it, but be a witness of it. Like cars going past on a highway. Don't hop on every car. Just watch them go by. Be aware of it. Be a witness. Be an observer. But don't go on the fear frequency ride. And that's a hard one, because some of them get very scary, and that's why, go in nature, go do something to change it. But that's, how I see it as well. Where do you live?
I live in the middle of the United States. I live in Missouri.
Ooh. I don't know, have you been to the ocean? But the ocean has...
yes, I have.
Riptides.
Yep.
Did you ever experience one of those?
Yeah, I have.
Okay. So
Not
I used
fun.
to be in the... So I used to live on Long Island. I was always in the ocean. I was always there. And a riptide is... it's not wide. It's pretty slim, but it's a draw that if you could stand on in the water up to your ankles and be drawn out into the sea, into the ocean, in a matter of seconds or minutes, because I've had that experience. Now, people try to get out of those riptides by swimming back to shore, but they're still in that current, that frequency. So a brave soul, when they're in that fear frequency, they have to go across the current, something different. You can't stay in the current and see something differently. It has to be across. So if you're in a riptide, you have to swim across only maybe a foot or two, and you're out of it. So that's part of how I see that fear frequency. It just brings you right out, and now you're drowning, So hopefully that explains a little bit about frequencies, because everything is sound.
Yes, it is.
Words are sound.
It behooves us, especially now, to be in this world, yet not of it, and to be very judicious about where we're going to place our attention and our energy. Do I want more of this for the world? Then that's where I'm going to place my attention.
And be that. That's because then if you're vibrating, if you want, whatever you want to change in the world, I wish people were nicer. Or I wish, I wish people were just, well, then be that person. Even if someone says something you don't like, don't get into that. Just be what you want to see, what you want to experience in this world. And that it will happen in your circumstance.
That's a great bumper sticker. Be what you want to see.
Be the world you want to be in. Because the thing is that as everyone, if you think about it, if enough people just create their circumstance the way they would want to live, peaceful and loving and having beauty and having people that care for them. And that is what creates the world that we share. Now, it's not going to be everybody, but if it's more than not, well, then it'll be more of what we experience in the world.
Well, and eventually we'll hit that tipping point, and let's not go into the 100th monkey thing, but
I love that book.
Yeah, eventually we'll get there, you know?
Yeah, I think it's going to be closer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling confident.
Well, I'm going to get on your bandwagon then, Stephanie. I'm going to say it's closer rather than far. Now, you've talked a little bit about the little self, or you've alluded to it. I call it the little self and then the greater self I am. So it's very similar. You call them the big S and the little s as far as perspectives go. So please talk about those two components of who we are.
When I say the small s, I'm not making it like insignificant.
Yeah.
It's just that the small s is our personal self, the egoic self, the one that has likes and dislikes. We call by name. You know, the one we see, oh, that's Susan, or that's Stephanie, or that's, John, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But, and that's the one that is presented in the physical shared world. Then we have what I see as a big S, the big self. That's the absolute self, that pure awareness.
Mm-hmm.
That part of us that is aware when we're dreaming, that part of us that's been with us from birth and now that's not changing. That part of us that is aware that we are aware. So that part is, I consider, the big S, because that's all inclusive, is including us in all aspects of existence. I also have another analogy that explains them both, is that the small s, or the personal self, separate self, is like a flashlight. And the big S, or the absolute self, or the pure awareness, is like a floodlight. So here's an analogy. I heard it, and I can't even give credit to where I heard it because I don't remember who said it. But anyway, it was a good analogy. You go into a warehouse and it's very dark. You open the door and you can't see, so you turn on your flashlight. And your flashlight, the little light goes on a box of cereal. Oh, there's all cereal in the warehouse. Okay. And then you go to the wall and you feel, oh, look, there's a switch. Then you turn on the floodlight and you see, oh my gosh, there's bicycles and all kinds of food. And it's all that is. There's more stuff. Now, the flashlight is our personal egoic self that focuses on it's a limited vision. Okay. The floodlight, the absolute self, or the big S, we see it's all that is. It's all pure awareness. Now, the great part of it is light is light. That small flashlight is still the same light as the floodlight. Okay, so what makes this so great when we start realizing that we are one that's in the physical, that's subject to time and duality and all that, and then we have that pure awareness, that witness. When you have that connection, the human experience of being both, putting them together, when your personal self has any focus on anything, you will always have the perception of the greater self. So does that make sense? When you have that connection, every experience that you choose to and what you focus on will always have the aspect of the greater perception. So you'll always be standing on the summit of the mountain, seeing the valley below, and you have a little understanding of where you're coming from, where you're at, and where you're going. Because light is light, and when your flashlight has that floodlight as its basis, well, then your flashlight is a lot brighter too, because you have the floodlight behind you. Does that make sense a little bit? That what I meant by that?
That's an absolute perfect analogy. I was having goosebumpy reaction when you were talking. It's like, how could you put this in a more simple and yet profound way? It's something that everyone can relate to, and it's absolutely true. I very much appreciated that.
Well, that's great. And our flashlight is important.
Yes.
But it's important, especially if we have the floodlight backing it up. Because I'm going to take it a step further. You ready?
Okay, go for it.
You're in the warehouse.
Uh-huh.
You got the floodlights on, and you're seeing the bicycles and the cereal. It's like overwhelming. It's all that is. You've heard that expression, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's pure potential of what this warehouse has. And if you didn't know that, you would never be able to take it what the warehouse offers you. There's just so much, possibilities. Oh, I don't just have to have cereal. I can have cheese. So then you realize, now you still see your flashlight is still on with the floodlight. Mm-hmm. And you still can see it a little bit, but you see another switch. So now this is my thing. And you turn that on. It's actually even a brighter floodlight. And now you can't even see your flashlight anymore, because everything is one. You're blinded by the light, but you can see everything in existence. So I don't know if I said that correctly, but you're blinded by light, but you can see everything because you can see everything as light. So you can't live like that, but you can have an experience like that when you're one.
Yes.
So basically, if your flashlight is on and you have access to that floodlight, that's pretty darn good.
It totally would change my awareness of the warehouse.
There you go.
It's not just cereal.
Not just cereal. They're all the potential. Mm-hmm. And that is very, very true. I mean, in the present is all possibilities, all potential, because the present is in that space. In that mystical space of unity.
So continuing the analogy, my flashlight is powered by my intention, correct? I can train my flashlight on what it is, and with the awareness that here's my intent, and I know I've got a floodlight behind me. So now when I'm moving with not only my personal purpose, but also the purpose of my soul.
Yep. And you have the support of all the universal forces. Mm-hmm. All that creative intelligence, those forces, your body, your heart's pumping, you're breathing, your eyes are doing this. It has nothing to do with us. Mm-mm. It's doing it. That's that life force. Same thing with our breath. So when we breathe, it's not just the inhalation and the exhalation. It's that which moves your breath and has nothing to do with us. So that creative force, that creative intelligence, we have access to that. And that is like the floodlight. So when you make a decision, you'll have all the universe supporting you. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing is that the flashlight is your personal self. It's what you focus on. It's what you think. It's your beliefs. It's your intention. But when your flashlight is in alignment with your floodlight, then you have a very bright flashlight, and it's very strong, and you'll have more of a direction with that. Does that make sense?
Yes. You've spoken about self-realization. Now, we're hearing a lot these days about awakening. So how do those two concepts, or is there a connection? I mean, intuitively I can feel it, but I'd like to know if you could please articulate that a little bit.
Well, I certainly can. Well, there's awakening, there's self-realization, there's enlightenment, there's samadhi, there's Santori. There's all these names, and all of them are really basically the same thing according to what I feel. However, they're different aspects of the same. So, for instance, I'm actually I'm writing about a book about it now. I see our lives as stories. We all live a story. Humanity lives a story. We're together and not. And that story, the grand story that I see, that I really feel that we're going towards that, is there's going to be an awakening to our true self. And that is that unity, that oneness, pure awareness, God self, eternal source, whatever you want to call it. And realize diversity is beautiful, but there is something that we all connect with, and it's usually love. And that love is, I interchange that with consciousness and awareness. So to me, the great awakening or the great story is the awakening to that love within us, the love and creativeness of a human, and within all things, actually. Self-realization is the aspect that when you just, it's this all the same thing. It's an awakening of who you are, but it's an aspect of starting to see that self in you, that I am, is the same I am in everything else. So the I am of me is the same I am of you. Now, I'm not talking about the egoic I am Stephanie with personal likes. Yes. And it's that one, that pure awareness that I am, that has been with me from birth to up to now. My body went through all the changes. My emotions went through changes. My thoughts are different, but the I am remained the same. Right. So self-realization to me is when that I am, when you start identifying that as yourself, you can see it in everything else, not through the physical eyes. You see, you know what I'm saying? You have a realization that, wow, that I amness, that pure awareness is within everything. So to me, that's self-realization, but it's still the same. It's just a different aspect of looking at it. And enlightenment, to me, is awakening from the dream. It's like, it's that recognition of your true nature. So again, they're all the same. However, when an individual starts to evolve consciously or involve consciously, humanity goes for the ride. So that's why I picked your podcast, because what individuals do, it affects humanity. Because what is humanity, Julia? It's a bunch of individuals. So if all the individuals start taking full responsibility of their inner state of consciousness in themselves, then if it reaches a critical point, we're going to experience more of that in our shared world. Because there is really no humanity. Humanity is a concept. It is what each individual is contributing to that. So it's all the same. But when one person starts to take that, assume responsibility, and I don't mean, I have to go to work today. I have to wash the dishes. Responsibility to responding to your life, then that affects and trickles in to the world we share. And you don't go into the fear frequency. You're in the love, passion frequency, the greater aspect. And then that is what changes the world. You can't change 8 billion people, but you can change yourself. You can transform yourself, and you can make a big difference. It's like a painting. If you look really close to a painting, you'll see all individual strokes if it's an oil painting. Well, each one of our lives is that individual stroke. And when you stand back, you see the beautiful living picture. So it does make a difference how we live our lives, on how the living picture of our shared world is projected.
Well, there's a song running in my mind right now. So I'm going to say this is a comment from Spirit. And the song, the words are waiting for the world to change. And literally, and I almost feel like, okay, so the message here is waiting for the world to change isn't going to change it. We have to actually, as you say, take active, intentional actions to move towards bringing ourselves in alignment with our greater self, our true self, our authentic self. I like to tell people your body is the avatar through which your soul expresses into this world. That's the only chance your soul gets to speak into this dimension, is through your body. If we can just see ourselves as an instrument, it kind of makes all the decision making and the struggles and everything that we go through it kind of shifts how I experience, at least I'll just speak for myself. It changes how I experience what happens to me in my life, putting quotes around that.
Very well said as well. And, the world is an instrument as well, the way I see it. Sometimes I see it as a musical instrument, let's say a flute. And the flute can't play by itself. So if the world is like an instrument, it needs, especially a flute, it needs the breath and to be blown into it to play beautiful music or really music that's not going to be very good. And we are the ones that give the world the breath. The breath the world does not have the ability to create on its own. It's an instrument. It's a reflection. It's so, I think, and have you ever heard the term Maya?
Illusion.
I use a lot of the yogic terms because they were so good,
And that's okay.
Yeah, the Indians had a lot of language for the inner self. Westerners have a lot of language for the outer self. But Maya is called an illusion of the world. Now, that doesn't mean the world is not real. I mean, when you get burned, you feel it. It's an experience. It's real. But what the illusion part of it is that it's not separate from you. The illusion is we feel the world is separate from us. And in actuality, it is an extension of all of us. So that's the illusion part, thinking it is separate. Because when you see something or hear something or feel something, where are you feeling it? In you. Every experience is within us. So the world is a big part of just a perception, an interpretive perception. And how does it turn into solidity? Well, that's another story.
Well, I like to say that the universe will rearrange itself to fit my picture of reality. Whatever I'm perceiving out here is a product of whatever is coming from inside of me.
Absolutely. There is something we all do share. So like if it's raining out, we all could say, well, maybe not in every country, but let's say in the United States, we could almost all say, oh, it's raining, because there's a shared physicality that we share in, a collective consciousness. But I may look at it and go, oh man, this is great. I want to go in and put my hair in it, or the birds are chirping. Somebody else might say, oh, damn, I can't stand the rain. And they see it as something that they have to deal with during the day. So a lot of perception and shared collective consciousness is part of the world that we all experience. But it is not separate from us, because even that collective consciousness, that it is rain, is from us, because we have that collective consciousness as well. So yeah, that is a very good point.
I want to let people know how they can find your beautiful books or learn more about what you offer. So would you care to share that information?
I certainly would. I have a website, stephanieacello.com. It will direct you to Amazon for the 2 books. It also has a link to my Facebook, which I put a lot of quotes on there as well. And if you ever want to send me a message, it also has a link to my email.
That's perfect. Now, I'll put your links in the show notes, and I will say that last name is spelled Acello, so they can find you. And I just want to thank you again for an absolutely delightful conversation. We've come to the end of our time today, and I want to thank the listeners for sticking with us. Please take a moment and go to evolvinghumanspodcast.com and leave a voicemail with your comments or questions by clicking on the purple microphone icon on the homepage. I'm looking for listener questions to feature on a future episode, so I'll be watching for yours.